Good afternoon. My name is Zhang Shu, and I'm from the National Institute of Information and Communications Technology in Japan. This is my second time to attend NANOG, and very glad to have this opportunity to talk here. Today, I'm going to talk about a few case studies in intra-domain routing instability. Firstly, I'm going to explain why we have focused on the intra-domain routing instability in our research. Then I'll present the results of some measurements that we did on two academic networks in Japan, the Wide Internet and the APAN Tokyo XP network. Then I'll talk about how to deal with the intra-domain routing instability. This includes the detection and troubleshooting. And finally, I'll give the conclusions. We refer to intra-domain routing instability as the unexpected routing changes within an IGP routing domain. By unexpected routing changes, we mean changes that are not due to normal network maintenance, but caused by some other unknown reasons. As you know, when routing instability occurs, the network need to reconverge, and that can cause packet loss, increased router load, and wasted bandwidth. So we need to do something if it is a problem. But why have we focused on the intra-domain routing? This is because we found that compared with the inter-domain routing, research or studies on IGP behaviors is still poor. Many operators still do not know well about what can happen to the routing of their networks. So by this presentation, I hope we can help operators better understand the intra-domain routing instability and learn how to deal with it. The methodology of our measurement is quite simple. First, we collected the raw messages of the routing protocol, because in Japan, most network providers use OSPF for intra-domain routing. In our measurements, OSPF messages were collected. OSPF is a link state routing protocol, and all of its information is flooded through the entire routing domain. So by connecting a data collector to an Ethernet segment, which is configured as a part of the OSPF backbone area, we can passively collect all the link state updates packets that have been flooded on this segment. The tool we use to record the data is TCP dump. Then we analyze the data by mainly counting routing changes. By routing changes, we mean changes in the content of an RSA. For example, the changes of the attached links, routers, or link metrics. We also count RSA flush as a routing change. However, we do not count changes in the AS external RSAs because most of them only describe external routes. In addition, we didn't count refreshing RSAs because they do not reflect any network topology change. The first measurement was did on the Wide Internet. The Wide Internet is a national academic network in Japan, and it is operated as a part of the WIDE project. It connects hundreds of academic organizations, and in total, there are about 50 routers in the OSPF backbone area. The data is collected at the NANOG of the Wide Internet, which is located in the Nara prefecture of Japan. There we collected both OSPF v2 and v3 data. Here are some results from the Wide Internet. This graph shows the number of router RSAs and the number of daily changes that have been observed in all these router RSAs. Because the router RSA includes the basic link status of each router, by this graph we can have a general view on the routing changes occurring on the wide Internet. The red line shows shows the number of router RSAs, and the blue line shows the number of daily changes. You can see that almost in all of the days, some changes have occurred. And although the number of changes has been relatively low in most of the period, there have been days in which the number can spike to very high levels. Here I need to point out that some of the changes are caused by normal network maintenance, but still the number is much more than we had expected. These are the results for the other three intra-domain RSAs. They are network RSA, network summary RSA, and ASBR summary RSA. You can see that as for the router RSA, the number of changes is relatively low in most of the days. However, it could be quite high at times. And for the summary RSAs, you can see that sometimes a lot of route changes can occur in the other OSPF areas of the wide internet. Here, I'll show you some examples of the observed RSA changes. This graph shows the most typical one. You can see that about 2 weeks ago, this router RSA changed twice in the early morning, declaring the down and up of two interfaces. It began the advertisement of up-down events again from noon and continued oscillating for about 4 hours. In our measurements of all observed routing changes, relatively frequent short-term changes like this example were observed most often. And we found that usually this kind of changes were caused by network congestion. This is an example of a very serious oscillation. This graph shows the number of changes for a layer 3 switch in 24 hours last year. You can see that this router RSA changed at very high rate, about 70 times every 5 minutes. The oscillation lasted for about 18 hours, and it changed more than 16,000 times. We observed this kind of oscillation for several times, and most of them were caused by problems of P2P links or misconfiguration of using the same router ID on two routers. Here is an example of the long-term changes. This graph shows the one-day result for a router located in San Francisco. You can see that this router originated the changing RSA relatively frequently. This oscillation lasted for more than five months, and it is the longest oscillation that we have observed. The reason for this is we are still not sure about the reason, but it is considered due to a switch problem. Here is another example of long-term changes. You can see that this RSA changed very slowly, only several times every day. However, this oscillation has persisted since this March. We observed this kind of changes for some times, and part of them were caused by the router's interface problems. Let's quickly look at the result of OSPF v3. Compared with OSPF v2 of the same period, the v3 seems to show more instability. This is because the IPv6 routing on the wide internet is still in the experimental stage, so I won't say much about it here. The target of our second measurement is the Tokyo exchange point of the Asia Pacific Advanced Network. This graph shows the topology of the entire APAN network. The Tokyo exchange point network is located in Japan, and you can see that it connects to many foreign countries. Because the main function of this network is to provide transit services among academic organizations in different countries, the network itself is relatively small in scale, with no more than 10 routers in the backbone area. However, this provided us with a good example to see what can happen on this kind of small-scale networks. This is the result for the APAN network. You can see that the overall trend is similar with that of the wide internet. That is, almost in all of the days, there have been some changes, and the number of changes is relatively low in most of the period. However, it can spike upwards from time to time. In this graph, the first and the third spikes was caused by the problem of an ATM link. The second one is caused by misconfiguration of router ID, and the last one is caused by a switch problem. We identified some causes of the observed instability. There are network congestions, some of which were caused by DDoS attacks, link failures, software bugs, hardware problems, and operators misconfiguration. As you can see, that most instability is due to other reasons rather than the routing protocol problems. The routing protocol is doing at least what it is expected to do in the specification. Let me summarize our findings. In our measurements, in our measurements of the intra-domain routing instability, we observed the instability on both the wide internet and the APAN Tokyo XP network. We found that the most typical changes are relatively frequent short-term ones, which usually happen at intervals of 10 to 200 seconds. We also observed some frequent short-term changes as well as some long-term changes. In addition, we found an overall trend of decrease in the total changes. This is because there are two reasons for this. The first one is the change in routers implementation. In the implementation of recent routers, the routing packets are usually given higher priority for procession than other packets to avoid dropping routing packet. The second reason for this is the less network congestion because of the increased network bandwidth in recent years. Concerning the causes of the observed instability, although we have identified some of them, but still there were many changes for which we could not find the reason. Here, I'd like to briefly introduce a system that we are developing to detect and visualize intra-domain routing instability. This system has two functions. First, it can detect IGP changes in real time and alert operators of the changes by email. It can also be used for offline data analysis. The second function is visualizing the instability. By visualization, we can make it easier for network operators to figure out to what extent routing changes are occurring on a network. The system is accessible through the web interface. Let's look at an example. Here is a page for APAN network. Today's status is shown here, and you can see so far a couple of changes have occurred. And if you click on this graph, then you can see what these changing RSAs are. This graph shows the daily number of all intra-domain RSAs of historical data, and if you can also see the detailed results of the historical data by picking a date. For example, if you can click on the number of changes of a specific date, and you will get a ranking list of the changing RSAs, which is sorted by the number of changes. And if you click on the number of changes for a specific RSA, then you can see at what time and by about what frequency this RSA is changing. You can also get the monthly or yearly statistical results, and you can also see how this RSA has changed. For example, which interface had gone down or gone up. Currently, this system only supports OSPF, but we are working on ISIS, and it will be completed soon. Let's look at troubleshooting of the intra-domain routing instability. As I said earlier, although we have identified some causes of the observed instability, there were still many changes that we could not explain. Why is this difficult? Mainly because the routing problems tend to occur intermittently, so it is difficult to get useful data for troubleshooting in a timely fashion. So we think the task of data collection for troubleshooting should not rely on operators. Instead, it should be combined to the instability detection system, so that when the system finds that something is changing, it can automatically start to collect a predefined data set, which can be used for later troubleshooting. We call this approach event-driven data collection. The data should be collected for the later troubleshooting are traffic volume, the router's interface status, and the information on the routing protocols. Where to collect the data? The first one should be considered is the router that originated the changing RSA, because this router is most likely to know what had happened. And sometimes network equipment connecting to the router, such as Ethernet switch, can hold some useful information for troubleshooting. So, for example, the traffic information about the traffic. So we should also collect data from such network equipment, and usually this kind of data can be obtained by SNMP. This is still a work in progress, and we are going to do more work on it. Here, to conclude, today I have talked about the results of some measurements that we did on intra-domain routing instability. We found that regardless of the network scale, the intra-domain routing instability can occur frequently and persistently. We think the results is not likely to be limited on the networks that we have investigated. So we'd like to recommend that you deploy a monitoring system on your own network. I also talked about a system that we are developing to detect and visualize IGP changes. Also, I talked about an approach which we hope can make troubleshooting easier. Here I'd like to thank the WIDE project and the NARO Institute of Science and Technology, operators of APAN network for their help during the data collection. I'd also like to thank Professor Yuki Kadobayashi for the idea on troubleshooting. This is the URL of our intra-domain routing stability measurement project. If you are interested in conducting an IGP measurement, please feel free to contact us. That ends my presentation. Thank you.
Is it Dr. Xu?
Yes.
I had a feeling, yeah. You may call me Dr. Harris.
One brief question. While you're collecting the data on the actual instabilities in the OSPF environment, did you look at whether there was actually any traffic loss at the time of the instability? So doing end host measurements on the prefixes that were changing based on the LSA information you had collected.
I'm sorry, can you repeat it again?
Did you actually do tests against any hosts on the network to see if there was a reachability problem during these periods of routing instability? Or did the instability have no impact on the reachability of hosts?
Yes. Especially about 2 years ago, when the network bandwidth is quite low, there were a lot of network congestions. We observed much instability caused by the network congestion. So we lost the connection to outside from time to time. That really annoyed us. Okay. Thank you.
I think he's just walking. Thank you very much.
Thank you.